I do want to thank the World Congress and the ACCC for this remarkable opportunity. I'm humbled to be asked to share some thoughts about a subject that I care very much about, leadership. I also want to acknowledge that I think we only need to look at our colleagues in Quebec and what they've been dealing with for the past 100 days to see what great leadership really looks like. I'm also honored to be here at the same time as the amazing Romeo Dallaire. I'm always moved and touched by your words and your courage, sir. And I'm quite overwhelmed to be here on the same stage as you. I'll also say that I'm very pleased to be co-scheduled with you, because I'm pretty sure you're the reason all of these people got out of bed on a beautiful Sunday morning and came here. Now, as Dawn mentioned, I had the privilege of working at our host college, NSCC, and you may not know this, but I had a bumpy start at NSCC. One of my first meetings was a college-wide professional development event, and there were about 125 managers there, and I knew no one, and I was standing with a group of student services folks, and they said, "Anne, you're so lucky we're having lobster." And I went, "Oh, I actually don't eat lobster." And there was silence. And then a man that I became very good friends with, a big Newfoundlander, says, "Well, that's okay. We'll get you a steak." And I said, "Oh, actually, I don't eat meat." And then the silence kind of wafted to hostility. And he leans over and he says, "Do you drink? Because if you don't, we're shipping you back." And it was perfect, and I drank, and I got to stay for 3 years. So now on to the topic at hand. Leadership for me is about embedding the values that let you think critically, act courageously, and be relentlessly optimistic, even though you've got both feet firmly planted on the ground. I want to take a minute to give this some context, because quite simply, I believe that the world needs us, needs colleges, polytechnics, institutes, cegeps, whatever we're called. They need us now more than they ever have. The world is in an interesting state with a number of significant dualities. We have technology and medicine that would allow us to cure many of the sick, yet millions die unnecessarily every year. We have food to feed the world, but hunger persists. We have countries that have made considerable and remarkable economic progress with dramatic advances in the quality of life, and we have others left further behind. We have exceptional organizations and people working for social justice and equity, yet human rights violations overwhelm us. We have people literally dying for the right to vote, and Canadians staying home because they're so disengaged. We're both awed by our humanity, and we're shocked by our lack of it. We raise our eyes to the skies of wonderment at cities like Dubai, and we bow our heads in shame at the cruelty of Darfur. We celebrate peace, even as we conduct war. We have deep, moving tributes to the limitless achievement of human beings, even as we express shock and terror and heartfelt, bone-deep sadness at the violence we're capable of. We celebrate the achievement and advancement of women, even as we hear of rape escalating as a tool of war, and girls punished for the audacious crime of going to school. On the education front, we have seen breathtaking developments in innovation, access for many, but there's an increased need for workforce development, an escalating demand for what we do because of the changing world of work. We have stubborn literacy issues, and as we heard yesterday, shocking gaps in how our Aboriginal and Indigenous people succeed. And globally, we're seeing youth disenfranchised and disengaged, and if history has taught us anything, it's that youth without hope are more likely to engage in violence. I'd also suggest we need to redefine our notion of the best and the brightest. Wall Street companies told you they hired the best and the brightest, and what we saw was young, well-educated people give in to greed and ignore the ethics we tried to teach them in school. And on top of this, we've had unprecedented changes in our world markets and economies. And let's think about that disaster for just a moment. It's purely man-made. No drought or famine, no hurricanes, winds, no tsunami, no earthquake. That tragedy lies squarely with us. And this economic crisis has created high unemployment rates, especially for youth all over the world. And at the same time, we hear about millions of jobs going unfilled because of the skills gap. So this duality, this yin and yang, this dark and light, it brings me back to the transformative power of education. Without a doubt, the best chance of anyone earning a living is to learn the craft, the skills, the attitude, the knowledge that lets them do meaningful work, to earn a living wage. And beyond the economic benefits, we know that social benefits accrue too. With an education, we vote more, we're healthier, we volunteer more, we're less likely to go to jail. We're less likely to be on welfare, and we're more likely to feel connected to our communities. And one of the real gifts of transformative education is that we open eyes and we give voice, especially at colleges like my own, where we put an emphasis on global citizenship. We expose the sheltered and the naive to the complexities of the world, and in doing so, we show them not only that they can help, but in fact that they must. For some of our students, their stories, their experiences, their realities, they bring us to our knees. For these students, we give them a rare and unique opportunity to push aside being overwhelmed and to learn instead to overcome. So this morning, I want to share with you just a few reflections. This is the narrative from my leadership portfolio, if you like. It's no advice. It's just commentary. So one of the things I've learned, leadership is a contact sport. I believe that those in a position of power have a special moral authority to lead well, but it is how leadership is demonstrated throughout the institution that is its hallmark of its strengths and its values. It's a contact sport, and it's a team sport. I want to share with you two compelling examples. There are many heroic stories linked to 9/11. This one is distinctly Canadian. It's the little-known story of a humble college with a huge heart and 1,500 passengers who slept on our floors. In 2001, I joined the Nova Scotia Community College, and I was drawn to Nova Scotia by the beauty of the province, and I was drawn to the college by the mission and the people who worked at it. I had no idea how much I learned about myself, about courage, about community. September 11th, 2001, I was in a meeting planning convocation ceremonies, and a knock on the door made all of that seem insignificant. A plane had hit the World Trade Center in New York, then another. Like people across the country, our small team was an absolute shock, but there was a significant difference here because NSCC's Akerley campus in Dartmouth was an urgent emergency response site. Within hours, passengers from flights brought down in Halifax were at our college. The week that followed changed my life forever. Working with the Emergency Management Office and the Red Cross, our campus was transformed. The cafeteria was ready for guests. Mattresses and blankets arrived. Food was delivered from large chains and small family restaurants, from local people desperate to help. Classrooms were emptied to allow families to stay together and to have privacy. The nursing lab became a makeshift hospice, ready to support the ill and the frail. 1,500 passengers made their way and stayed with us for between 5 and 7 days. After hours on the tarmac, frightened people were loaded onto buses and transported to the campus. They had little more than the clothes on their back, carry-on luggage clenched tightly in pale, tense hands. Small bags that had been hastily packed before boarding were now the only possessions, the only link to home and family. With anxious eyes, do you know the first question they asked us? What country are we in? We said, Canada. They said, are we safe? We said, we'll do our best to keep you safe. We showed them our flag, and as it has throughout history, the red maple leaf flooded our guests with warmth and relief, reassuring them that they were not alone. NSCC is a renowned culinary school, and while the donations of food were welcome, our chefs knew that professionally prepared food was healthier and much better for our guests. And so for days, they cooked endlessly. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, halal, kosher, vegetarian, probably lobster. Food was used, as it has been across cultures and over time, to comfort, to reassure, to nurture, to break through language and cultural barriers. A local forest sent flowers, sparks of colors that symbolized hope and renewal and life. And in the way of the Maritimes, people came to visit and to vent, to share stories and hold hands over cups of thick black tea. The college community was a force to be reckoned with. Volunteers poured into the campus, and it didn't matter what your day job was. People volunteered and simply did what was needed. I served food, I cleaned toilets, I cradled babies, and I swept floors. I held hands and I wiped tears, often my own. The grace and the dignity of our passengers, because they became our passengers, was matched only by the compassion and caring of the college community. I do not believe that I've ever been more tired. I know that I've never been more proud nor more humbled. You know many heroes linked to 9/11, but I would tell you that Bruce Tawes and Graham McDermott and Virginia Jackson and dozens of other volunteers from NSCC should be among them. The passengers were with us for only a short while, but they remain with me forever, just like the lessons Nova Scotians taught me about courage, about community, about grace, and about leadership as a team sport. My second example involves my own team at Centennial, who are just remarkable. Not long into my first term as president, my sister was diagnosed with breast cancer. Centennial was filled with great people, but it'd be fair to say we had a problem or two. We had declining enrollment, we had increasing debt, we had employees who felt increasingly disengaged with the mission and vision of the college. In the midst of planning with teams from across the institution to address these issues together, I was now brokenhearted over my sister's illness. Without hesitation, I shared my news with my executive team, and without hesitation, they said, "What do you need?" My sister and I lived together. That's another presentation and a whole other story. But during her chemo, she would stay with my parents for a few days, and then she'd come home and be with me for a few days into the weekend. So I needed to be with her on those nights to be able to make dinner, which wasn't really fair because I can't cook, but anyway, and to look after her on the weekend. My executive team members were remarkable, already stretched to the limit. They simply found ways to ensure that I could be there when I was needed. They covered the weekend events without complaint. And when I decided to shave my head in solidarity for my sister and to raise money for the bursary that I named after her, they were the first to donate money. They sat in the front row of my public head shaving, and in fact, they gave me a dozen hats. I'm not sure if that was for me or so that others didn't have to look at what had happened. The goal was to raise $10,000. There's $180,000 in that fund today because of what those people did. The college community was amazing too. They shared their private stories. Women told me about their own fight with this disease. And our School of Transportation faculty created a whole new outreach program called the Show and Shine, and they donated money to the bursary. So I've watched my college change and grow, unite and engage, and I've seen firsthand that leadership's a team sport. I think that leadership that is authentic and transformative requires that you love the institution you serve. In fact, I go a step further and say it's about unconditional love. I believe that author and researcher Jim Collins had it right when he talks about leaders who offer humble leadership. You know the warts and the boils, and you know the secrets hidden in the walls of the institution that are eating it alive from the inside. Humble leaders know all of this, but they love the place, they champion it, they value it anyway. It's no sin to want to change or strengthen your institution. In fact, I would say that's what great leaders do. But if the mission doesn't resonate with you, if the students don't move you, don't touch you, if the bones of the place don't make you feel like you're at home, it's not a good fit. Don't make it over in your own likeness to meet your ambition. My college is transformed because we found pride and we faced our demons. Leadership is about fighting for what needs to be changed with grace and with respect and with tenacity. But leadership is also about celebrating with joy what we do well. Look at who we serve, what we do, and tell me, is there a better place to be? With our commitment, our joint commitment to social and economic inclusion, to equity, to global citizenship, to transformational learning, to providing educational opportunities to every socioeconomic background, from the wealthy to the poorest, is there anywhere else you could work that lets you bring this commitment to life? Bruised and broken, or bright and brilliant, love the institution you serve. I think you need to live the leadership you believe in. You know, as a senior leader, people watch you and they listen to you. And it doesn't mean they'll do whatever you ask. I learned that pretty early on. but it does mean they watch. Your behavior must always reflect the values of the organization and the values you say you believe in. The minute you act out of concert with the behaviors you say you value, that's the minute people realize they don't really have to change. My institution, we joke that leaders do not have the privilege of temper. The minute we show it, the minute we're sarcastic, and Dorothy Parker had a great quote. She said, a great quote, "Wisdom has wit. Sarcasm is merely calisthenics with words." I love it. When we have flippant remarks, when we let bad behavior go, when we badmouth a colleague or a competition or a partner, when we're cynical, what we're saying to our college is, please be sarcastic, angry, and cynical. Leadership requires followers. When you show joy, when you listen, when you engage, you pull others along with us. And I have to say, despite the long hours, the crippling schedules, and the personal sacrifices that many of us make for this work, I have no time for the leader as martyr. We should be honored to do what we do, and our colleagues should always see our passion and rarely our fatigue. My father was a carpenter, and of many lessons, one that he taught me, that building is more difficult and ultimately more rewarding than demolition. Now, don't get me wrong. Taking a hammer to something every once in a while and just crashing it down, pretty cathartic. But he taught me that it's noble to go to work every day and to build. So listen to your critics, but do not let them define you, and listen to your proponents and don't believe everything they say. And remember to go to work every day and to build something, and do it by living the leadership you believe in. I think great leaders do what is right for women and girls. Madeleine Albright said, "There is a special place in hell for women who do not help other women." I would add that they will be joined in hell by those who would use power to hold half the population back. Supporting women frees us all. Marian Anderson said it well. She said, as long as you keep a person down, some part of you has to be down there to hold them. So you cannot soar as you might otherwise do. In years of working with women's issues and bringing them to light, I've learned much about myself and about the diversity of women. In Canada, we still earn less than men for the same work, a gap that's widening for women with university degrees. We serve on fewer than 15% of corporate boards, and we've been all but absent from powerful political positions, although way to go the West. There's been some notable breakthroughs. While this matters, all of this matters, it feels a little like complaining that the sheets on our hotel room beds are not soft enough when we compare it to the experience of women and girls throughout the world. Perhaps tens of thousands are victims of rape in country where sexual assault is an instrument of war. Abuse knows no boundaries, but proliferates in communities who accept it as a fact of life. And religion can be used to guide and to teach. The lessons often confine, constrict, and punish women and girls. For those of us fighting for women, the appalling disparities between our own experience, local needs, and global issues can be overwhelming. It's essential we come to terms with this complexity and to realize it's all about a common fight for humanity and for dignity. The bottom line is beautiful in its simplicity. Champion equity is a worthy and just fight, and we have to fight for women and girls. I do think this is an issue not just for women. We don't want to leave men out of the equation. I understand and I loathe the patriarchy that suppressed the rights of women and girls, but we live in an interconnected world, and to say that some men cannot understand this work, cannot champion it, cannot make a difference with it, is using the same argument that keeps us out of things. How dare we push for the rights of one group and marginalize the other? The research is clear. Supporting girls and women transforms community, it strengthens family, it pulls people out of poverty. And if you want to see this in action, speak to my friend and colleague Claudio about the Brazilian 1,000, which is now 100,000 women project. I think leaders need to have what Jim Collins calls BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. I wish the translators luck with that. Anyway. At Centennial in Toronto, we redefined our academic mission and our vision to demonstrate our commitment to global citizenship, equity, and social justice. This was not easy work, but it has been remarkable, remarkable work. When we introduced our groundbreaking signature learning experience, we took the tradition of applied learning and creative learning to a whole new place. We embedded outcomes for every student, regardless of their field of study, in global citizenship and social justice. We implemented a mandatory gen ed course called Global Citizenship from Social Analysis to Social Action. In the finest tradition of college programming, it's an applied course. And there was an argument when we started this that we should keep it for certain programs where the students were the best and the brightest and could do it. And our argument was, no, this is for all students across the curriculum. Building onto that program, we began what we call our Giselles, our Global Citizenship Service Learning Expeditions. And these are opportunities for our students to go offshore, to spend 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks in a community, learning about it. They don't show up saying, hi, we're from Canada, we have the answers. They come with open hearts and open minds, ready to make a difference and leave a legacy behind. We've built greenhouses, and we built schools, and we've built capacity. And we've taken things away. We've taken away strength. The most remarkable thing I ever saw was a young Pakistani woman who came to Centennial after immigrating to Canada and had a very rough entry into our country. She found her way to Centennial to study social work. And she stood in front of our Board of Governors and she said, I'm a Muslim Pakistani woman who came to Canada. I had the chance to go in a Giselle, and I stood in the Dominican Republic working with young children. I was surrounded by Spanish-speaking children all at my feet. And I suddenly realized, as a Muslim Pakistani coming to Canada, standing in the Dominican Republic, surrounded by Spanish children, that this is what it meant to be Canadian. If you want a chance to talk to the students who have been in these Giselles, they're here with us and they're in the center. Extraordinary to have the BHAG, to have the courage and tenacity to make those big goals come to life, and then to watch what happens when the institution brings it all together. Now, this may surprise you. I have on occasion been called intense. I know. But I think that transformative leadership requires that you learn how to laugh, how to have fun. We have very difficult jobs, and it's true that life is a roller coaster, and that's a very apt metaphor, because there are those sheer drops that take your breath away, and there's those long, slow creeps where anticipation builds. Caring about the world and about the people we work with in our teams opens us up to be overwhelmed by the challenges. But if you truly wish to make a difference, you have to be healthy and whole. And it means we have to look after ourselves and each other. There has to be joy in our lives, and we can't feel guilty about having a good laugh. Gandhi says, live as if you were to die tomorrow, learn as if you were to live forever. And I would add, laugh as often as you can, as you do both. So I want to leave by asking you as leaders to do two things. The first is I'd ask that you allow yourself to be inspired. Find a way to lead that's authentic and passionate and powerful and courageous. But try this test. At the end of a day or a week, do some reflection and think to yourself, how often were you the critic? How often, instead of sitting there and being in the moment, were you thinking, I would have done this differently? Or I could do this better? Or, you know, it was okay, but I would change 12 things. Instead of just soaking in what's being taught. We stress critical thinking, which is necessary and important, but we cannot and should not simply teach others how to be a critic. We should never succumb to that almost magnetic field that pulls us towards cynicism. So please, let a poem, let a song, let the ocean, let the sun on your face, let a child, a writer, let Romeo Dallaire move you. And in fact, think for a moment about a student whose story touched you deeply. Think about a student who's going to graduate this week or next month and about how you helped them. Think about the person you laughed with the loudest. Think about the student who taught you more about yourself than you gave them. And I'd ask you, how could you not be inspired? My final ask to you is that you find and you use your voice. Positions of leadership come with access to a bully pulpit. Our work needs champions, minds needs changing, governments need influencing, opinion leaders need their opinions changed, take whatever opportunity you can to give your message, to give our message. You know, when I was a little girl, I knew exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be a singer. And because I was a little girl, I knew exactly what I'd be wearing. I'd be on a fabulous stage, and it would be all dark, and the orchestra would be over here, and I'd have the most stunning black velvet gown, probably some saucy shoes, and I would stand in front of the microphone and I would sing. That was my dream. I thought that songs and music was the most amazing way to get a message across. And then one day I tried to sing. It was very, very ugly. I cannot sing. And my heart was broken. I thought that dream had been denied. But then I have to tell you, as a college graduate, as a product of the system, I fell in love with what we do. And I fell in love with the fact that education could be this powerful. And I believed so passionately in that transformation that it gave me a voice. I found places where I could stand for what I believed in, where I could champion, where I could lobby, where I could bring students' stories to the front. And finding that love, that passion, finding that voice was a gift for me. So there's no melody, but I have found my way to sing. So I want to end with a thank you. I want to thank my friends and my colleagues and my students, because they fill me up on the days in this job that are the toughest, and they remind me every day what real courage looks like, and they give me moments of intense joy and laughter, and they make me so extraordinarily proud. So please, lead and love and laugh, fall down, get up, rage and cry, and love what you do, and please, be the change you wish to see in the world.